Story time about how this one girl bullied me so bad she tried to beat me up, but guess what? The joke was on her because my sister beat her up. I was in 8th grade and I was bullied pretty badly, but this one girl in particular who didn't like me would make my life miserable. This girl was in 10th grade and I was in 8th grade at the time. I didn't defend myself at the time. I was really just scared of everything and everyone because I got bullied so much. And my sister knew that, which is why she was always looking out for me. She always had my back. So the bully, let's call her Jackie. Jackie started leaving me mean notes in my locker. And at the time, I guess I didn't really know if it was her. It could have been many people since I got bullied by many people. And the kids in my class would group around me whenever I would go to open my locker just to see my reaction when I would read the mean things she left in the notes. So for example, she would make fun of my acne and my big lips. But it got so much worse. One day I was walking down the hallway and she comes up right behind me and spills fake blood all over my back, making it look like I had my period. I was mortified, and she did this in front of everyone when we were on break. Then in front of everyone, she says that she's gonna beat me up at lunch and that I better be there, so come back for part 2. Part 2. So Jackie the bully spilled fake blood down my back, making it look like I had my period, and then she announced to everyone that she was going to beat me up at lunch and that I better be there. The bell rings and someone tells me that she's waiting for me at the soccer field. My God, I was so scared. Of course, I wasn't planning on going, but 3 of the girls in my class literally took me by my arms and took me to the soccer field. Gosh, were they mean. And of course, there's a whole audience waiting for me. Jackie was right in the center. As soon as I get there, she starts yelling at me. And you know what I did? I asked her, "Why do you hate me so much?" She actually didn't know what to say. She stayed quiet. So I asked her, "What did I do to you?" Then she said she saw me on a commercial in our local channel and that it made her really angry. And I said, "Is that all?" Then she said that she didn't like my face either. She starts pushing me backwards. She pushed me a few times and I fell back. She was literally about to kick me when I hear my sister yelling from behind the crowd saying, "Why don't you pick on someone your own size?" The crowd parts and my sister comes through and tells Jackie to leave me alone. Then she tried to kick me again and my sister tackled her to the ground. Come back for part 3. Part 3, as Jackie the bully is trying to kick me, my sister tackles her to the ground. Well, Jackie got really scared because she was not expecting that. And my sister picks her up from the floor and throws her into a bush. Jackie starts to cry and she says that she's going to tell on my sister. Well, my sister says, "I have all the notes that you've been sending to my sister and we can compare it to your own handwriting." Guess who they'll believe? My sister took me to the principal's office and we gave her all of the notes and I told her everything that happened. So the principal went and searched Jackie's backpack. Guess what she found? Scissors and tape. Jackie confessed that she wanted to tie my hands and cut off all my hair. She got suspended from school for 3 days. When she came back, her parents took her to my classroom and made her apologize in front of everyone. If you're being bullied, speak up.
Story time about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom would go to work, he would invite me to go see a movie and he would just be really flirty with me. And he was only 6 years older than me. And my mom was 32. You do the math. Anyways, like for part 2. Part 2 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, the guy was being super flirty with me, inviting me to the movies when my mom wasn't home and all that stuff. Well, then it led to more than just that. By the way, this guy did not have a job, so he was home with me 24/7. And I was doing online school. So we were in the house by ourselves, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Anyways, like I said, it led to more and we started doing the nasty and stuff. Ew, just, yeah. Well, the one day after we got done doing the nasty in my mom's room, we had fell asleep. And yes, we did not have clothes on. Well, at 2 in the morning, I hear someone pounding on the bedroom door. And my mom worked night shifts. So we get up, he hurries up and gets dressed and tells me to hide under the bed. And he opens the door and it's my mom's sister. My sister literally lived in the apartment next door. And she was like, "Oh yeah, neither of you were answering the phone, so she wanted me to check on you guys. Like, where's Elena?" And I'm still under the bed naked, like for part 3. Part 3 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, I'm laying under the bed, no clothes on. She asks where I am. And he's like, "Oh, she should be in her room." So he goes looking for me everywhere with her. And he's like, "Oh, well, maybe she's outside on the patio." And I don't know why the hell my mom's sister had a key to our apartment anyways. But she's still looking for me in the apartment and she looks under the fucking bed. And at first she's like, "Oh my God, what did he do to you?" And I'm trying to tell her nothing, like I made that decision on my own. So she calls my mom right away. My mom comes home. She's screaming at me and she kicks me out. So I go to my grandma's house and I told my grandma what happened. And my grandma calls her and she's like, it's not her fault that you gave her daddy issues. And I'm like, bruh, what the fuck? Child, anyways. So then she goes on Facebook and starts posting about how I'm a whore and a slut and how, like, it isn't her boyfriend's fault at all. So now I
started dating this guy last February, and for Easter he invited me to his family's house, and I really wanted to make a good impression. He was like, don't worry, they'll love you. The only thing is that my mom is obsessed with her dog, so make sure you're nice to him. I'm like, of course I'm gonna be nice to her dog. I love dogs. So we get to his house, and the first thing we see is this loud yapping chihuahua running towards us. It's like missing patches of hair and has this really bad underbite, but I was like, oh, what a cutie. Mom's like, isn't he so cute? That's Peter. Who names a dog Peter? So we go to the kitchen, and then all of a sudden Peter starts vigorously humping my leg. His little pink wiener comes out. The mom's like, oh, he does that. He keeps coming back and humping it. So I go to the bathroom, and in my purse I have this little lavender perfume oil that I rub all over my legs, hoping that Peter won't like the smell of lavender. I go back out, we sit down for dinner. Peter goes under the table and starts licking my legs for the entire dinner. So finally we go home, but then his mom calls the next day, and she's crying because she had to take Peter to the vet because he was throwing up all night. I felt so bad. That dog ingested way too much lavender oil, and it's definitely my fault, but I don't say anything. Peter ended up being fine. He fully recovered. I never went back to his house because I was avoiding Peter, tiny, horny chihuahua from hell.
I slept with my teacher for money story time. This story is anonymous. So growing up, me and my two younger sisters were always poor, and my mom was a single parent. My mom worked 2 whole jobs and could barely be around us. This drove her into a depression. She wasn't doing her second job the same anymore, so they fired her. Then after a while, we started struggling to make ends meet, and we got really desperate. My teacher, Mr. Wilson, noticed I wasn't participating in class as much, so he pulled me aside. He asked me what was going on in my household, so I told him. He then said, well, I could help with that. I was so desperate, so I asked him how. Mind you, we were about to get put up our house at this time. He told me that if I did him a favor, he could cover everything until we're back on our feet. I hated him for that, and I was so angry with myself, but I felt like I had to do it. After I did the do, he wired my mom $10,000. Now, he's a teacher, so I don't know where he got that kind of money from. I then just told my mom it was from school donations because I told the principal what was going on. And still to this day, she has no idea.
Story time about how I nearly got stabbed by my ex's sister. My ex asked me to move in with him and his sister in his hometown. She had just given birth and needed help around the house and help with her 6-month-old puppy, Marley. She never really cared for the dog and said once I moved, we could have the dog, so I moved. My boyfriend and I were the only ones who took care of Marley. We bought her food, took her out for walks and potty breaks, bathed her, everything. One day, we found out Marley could jump the fence and get out. My boyfriend and I decided to get her a new collar and tag in case she got lost. We obviously put our number on the tag since she was basically ours. The next day when we were at work, his sister was blowing up our phones. She was going ballistic about the dog tag and saying that if we didn't answer her soon, she'd abandon Marley. We rushed home as soon as we could and they got into an extremely heated argument the moment we stepped foot in the house. She was threatening and screaming at us all over a dog tag put on a dog that we solely paid for and took care of. She pulled out a baton which made my boyfriend lose it and smashed the glass bookshelf, yelling at her to knock it off and put it away. She then traded it for a very large kitchen knife and turned her focus to me. She called me vile names while she inched closer to me with the knife. She had me cornered and I was terrified. Part 2 of how I nearly got stabbed by my ex's sister. As she got closer, my boyfriend made sure to step in front of me while breaking more things and telling her off. I started videotaping and I called the cops. Once she saw that I had called the police and videotaped her, she put the knife away. However, she kept threatening us and swung on both of us. My boyfriend put her into a light headlock and held her down to get her to calm down while I screamed at him to let her go. This was all happening in front of her 4-year-old and the newborn baby. The kids were screaming and crying, the dog was scared, and I was scared. She threatened to put a hit on me for ruining her family. Luckily, their mom ended up arriving and splitting everything up. When the police came, we all got questioned separately. She was trying to get my boyfriend arrested for assaulting her since he had pinned her. Luckily, I showed them the videos and told them where she had put the weapons. With all the evidence against her, they realized that my boyfriend was just trying to protect us. Nothing came of it, but we weren't allowed to go back to the house without a police escort. We grabbed all of our belongings and moved to my parents' house, which was 5 hours away. Everyone except me got over it, but she never apologized and she gave the dog to her friend. I eventually broke up with that boyfriend because he had major anger issues and he was a cheater. I'm happy I never have to deal with them again.
You guys are not even going to believe this. This is a story time about how I caught my sister's boyfriend hooking up with our Nana. It was summer of 2019 and me, my boyfriend, my Nana, my sister, and my sister's boyfriend all decided to plan a trip to France. A few days before we were supposed to leave though, my sister got really ill and so she decided to stay home. She didn't see any problem with her boyfriend still going though since she trusted him. And they basically grew up together. Anyways, a few days into our trip, my Nana ended up having a heat stroke. We had a whole day plan of going to the beach and shopping and we asked if she wanted to come, but she insisted that my sister's boyfriend stay with her and take take care of her. And he said he didn't mind because there was plenty of other days that he could go to the beach while we were in France. My Nana and him always got along and talked a lot, so we didn't really see a problem with it either. So my boyfriend and I left, and we didn't get our usual update for our Nana, so after a few hours, we decided to come back. We walked back to the hotel, and we noticed that the door was locked. We knew that there was a key inside, and we kept knocking to get their attention, but no one ever answered the door. We were really worried, so we ran down to the front desk to grab an extra key, and that's when we were finally able to open the door. Follow, share, and add me on Instagram, and I'll do a part 2. Hey guys, and welcome back for part 2 of my grandma hooking up with my sister's boyfriend. So we were finally able to open up the door to the hotel room, and we all immediately had the worst feeling. Honestly, I thought maybe she wasn't okay or something had happened to her. So my boyfriend and I went to go open up the bedroom door, and there she was with my sister's boyfriend. We were totally stunned, and I just about fainted. I obviously immediately had to tell my sister, so I picked up the phone to call her, and you're never gonna believe what she said. She was like, yeah, I already knew about this, and that's why we had taken a break before. So she had literally walked in on her boyfriend and our grandma hooking up before, and she still proceeded to date him. So the moral of the story is, don't date someone who isn't 1000% head over heels for you, because they might end up getting with your grandma. Have you ever had 17 girlfriends, 2 fiancés, 1 wife, and 4 kids? Yeah, me neither, but Jason freaking Collier did. So let's get into this case. So Jason Collier, who was the chief of police in a small town in Texas, ended up matching with a girl on a dating site. Her name was Cecily, and they hit it off really well. She was a mom, she was divorced, and he presented himself as a really good, godly man that was gonna take over. He offered to take care of everything, pay for everything, and then eventually proposed over the phone a couple months later. She accepted, and from then on out, he was referring to her as Mrs. Collier. Cecily got a little bit suspicious that he might be using her, so she went to go do some investigating herself. And on the police website, it listed him as being married and having kids. So she was like, okay, something doesn't add up. She confronted him and essentially was like, hey, what's this about? He was like, oh my God, no, I'm divorced. Like, we're getting married, baby. I love you. And he even gave her the annulment papers as proof, but they were all forged. So Cecily immediately took to Facebook. And that's when other girls started to come forward. And man, was a timeline created. Like for part 2. Okay, part 2 with the Jason Collier case, because this ish is crazy. So this man was literally juggling every single relationship possible that you could have. Like, save some women for the rest of us, Mr. 17 girlfriends, 2 fiancés, 1 wife. Anyway, so the first person to reach out because of the Facebook post was a girl named Christy. Christy saw it and she was like, oh my God, that's my man. Not only had they been dating, but he had also proposed to her, and they were also planning a wedding. He was literally syncing up so many of the stuff that he said to these 2 girls. He literally bought one a coffee maker and then talked to the other one about buying her a coffee maker. And while he picked out one of the girls' rings, he was texting the other girl about picking her out a ring. While he was off with the other one, he would always send little video updates. And one of them was even about how he was helping out when the Capitol storming happened, even though he was just with one of his girlfriends. And as you guys should know, this is entirely illegal. So he obviously had to resign from the police force, and then he was arrested later that day. The charge was for tampering with a government document with the intent to harm. And when I say a whole binder of women came forward with screenshots, but at least he gifted them all coffee makers. Follow me on Instagram for more content.
I was in class on Zoom. I wanted to go to sleep, honestly, because like when I'm tired, I go to sleep. I end up falling asleep, and then class ends and everyone starts leaving the class except me, because I was like in a whole other universe at this point. I was dreaming, I was flying. At this point, me and the teacher are alone in the call. This is the best part. Then the teacher starts talking to me and he's like, Samantha, wake up. Samantha, please. Samantha, you have another class. He woke me up, but I was half awake, so I didn't really know what was going on. So I thought it was my brother waking me up, and I straight up yelled. I was like, shut up, you fat booger. And so then I realized, oh shit, I just called my teacher a fat booger. And now he scheduled a parent conference. I'm going on Monday, so I'm really excited.
This story was submitted to me by a follower who would like to remain anonymous. When I was 14, I had a best friend named Lucy, and we had one of those friendships where we were really close really quickly, which I now know is a red flag and usually a sign of a toxic friendship, but I was too young to know this then. Our favorite thing to do together was hang out at the mall. Our parents would let us go alone as long as we abided to one rule. We had to stay together at all times, and we were always pretty good about that. One night we were having a sleepover at Lucy's house, and her Uncle Mike came over for dinner. Uncle Mike was pretty loud and goofy. He showed us like 8 magic tricks that night. I liked him, he was fun, but as I was helping clear dishes after dinner, I overheard Mike and Lucy's mom having a hushed conversation in the kitchen. She was like, you've had too much to drink, why don't you just spend the night? So Mike ended up sleeping over that night too. Right before going to sleep, Lucy's mom came into the bedroom, and she told us to remember to shut the bedroom door before falling asleep. When I asked Lucy why she said that, Lucy just shrugged and said, I don't know. But we made sure the bedroom door was shut just like she asked. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the feeling of someone tickling my feet. So I was having a sleepover at Lucy's house and I woke up in the middle of the night to someone or something tickling my feet. I scream and then I hear shuffling. Lucy wakes up and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I tell her that something was tickling my feet, but she doesn't believe me. I'm like, "Well, why is the door open? We shut it before we went to sleep." And she goes, "Relax. Sometimes it happens because there's a draft in the house." And I tell her that I think it was her uncle who was tickling my feet and she goes, "Oh, come on, you're hallucinating." And honestly, at the time I had a bad feeling about Lucy's reaction. It felt like she was gaslighting me and I had no idea why. A few weekends later, Lucy and I are chilling at the mall on a Saturday afternoon. My parents let us go to the mall together alone, but their one rule is that we have to stay together the whole time. They call it the buddy system. So that day, Lucy's acting weird. She keeps looking around nervously and checking her phone. She says she has to go to the bathroom and I'm like, "Okay, I'll go with you." Because we always go together even if the other person didn't have to pee. And Lucy's like, "No, I'll go alone. I'll be quick." And I'm like, "No, I'll just go with you." And she snaps really aggressively and she's like, "Just stay here." And then she spins around and sprints away from me. So Lucy's running away from me in the mall. I sprint after her. She's super fast. She rounds a corner and then I can't find her after that. I start crying. I have no idea why my best friend ran away from me. So I sit down on a bench in the mall. I'm still crying, really overwhelmed. Then I hear someone say my name. So I look up and it's Lucy's uncle, Uncle Mike. He asks what's wrong and I tell him. He's being super nice and comforting. And then he starts rubbing my back, which made me uncomfortable, but I don't say anything. Then he offers to give me a ride home. And I say, "No, I can just call my parents." And he goes, "Just let me give you a ride. Come on." But the way he said it the second time gave me goosebumps. It was aggressive. Like he wasn't asking me, he was telling me. So I stand up and step away from him and say, "You're making me uncomfortable. I'm calling my parents." Mike glares at me and then he says, "No one likes a tease." And he walks away. I told my parents what happened and they immediately called Lucy's parents. Apparently, Uncle Mike had taken a liking to me. And he found out that I was going to be at the mall that day with Lucy. And Mike paid her $100 to run away and leave me alone with him. He told Lucy that I liked him too and that she was being a good friend by giving us alone time. I never spoke to Lucy again after that.